Hey, it is Saturday. Do you know what that means? It means I don't have to work. It also means it's time to water the plants. Ah, they're gone. So every single week I take all of my plants, there's over 200 of them, truck them into the kitchen, and I water them one by one. I move them in big groups because it makes it a little bit more efficient. So let's go take a look and see how it all is. I have moved the bedroom plants into the kitchen and it looks like a disaster in here. Sweet, right? So I'm gonna set you up and show you how I do this and explain some of the steps that I go through to water my plants. Step number one is to get all the plants into the living or into the kitchen. And the reason I do this is it allows me to like kind of bulk water them. God, the lighting in here is so bad. Awful. I've set up a grow light, go figure, and I'm hoping that that'll fix this. I think it's still gonna look bad, so bear with me. I'm gonna pretend none of this happened. Let's just film and pretend that you're step one. I'm gonna clean the sink out because I don't want any like bacon fat or whatever else could be in here. Step two is gonna be to mix up some fertilizer. And I normally have to do this probably, I would guess probably 6 to 10 times during the watering. So what I do is I take a jug, big old jug, it's a 4-liter jug, which is also the same as a gallon. Take my fertilizer and I use anywhere from 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon up to a maximum of a full teaspoon. Drop it in, get the water going. Make sure that the water is slightly cool to touch. You don't want it to be over about 25 degrees Celsius. Our body temperatures, I believe, are 27 to 30-ish, right? So it shouldn't feel hot or warm to your hand. It should feel slightly cool, quote unquote, tepid. Then I take that and I fill the bucket up. And once it's full, I'll take the jug, stir it around a bit, just use my hand. Then I grab my hefty and super, what's the word, luxurious? I don't know, it's just a water bottle. And I've punched some holes in the lid. And I take that and I fill it up with fertilizer water. And this is used to help distribute the fertilizer on each plant. Set that aside. Next, I'm going to distribute the plants in the sink so that we can fertilize and water them. One of the things that I definitely want to address that is super important that has to do with some of the logic behind the way that I water. When you look at this, you see that it has 2 pots. It has an outside pot, which is literally just some fancy plastic pot. It has no holes in the bottom. And then it has an inside pot, which does have holes in the bottom. It's also transparent. So the purpose of this is it allows you to see the roots, which can also be photosynthetic on a lot of orchids. Plus, it has holes in the bottom, which means you get a lot better drainage and airflow inside the pot. Now, the advantage of having the second pot, you'll notice it has no air holes or drainage. It means that during watering, I can fill this up and allow the plant inside to soak in a bowl of water for 5 to 10 minutes so that it can get maximum hydration in a very small period of time. To me, this is one of the most essential things that a lot of people miss when they're watering orchids, because all the stuff you read online says, don't let plants sit in water, don't get them wet, don't let them soak, they'll get bacterial infections, and all of these awful, terrible things. The problem with all of the things that you read is it's geared towards people who are growing in a greenhouse or who grow in areas where the humidity is very high and where water is already available in the air. If you're like me and you live in North America, in the central areas, not along the ocean, availability of water in our atmosphere is not that great. And what happens is we get our plants who are used to living in the tropics, who have lots of water, and they don't have that here. So where does the water go? Out of their leaves, and they get dehydrated super quickly. So the way that I found that to work around that is by doing this soak method, which I actually think I learned from Bumblebee, who is one of my favorite YouTubers about orchids because she's super thorough and very kind and just like a great person to listen to. So if you haven't checked out her channel, you should do that. It's really great. So what happens if you don't have one of those plastic pots like that and you need to take a regular pot like this and give it a soak? I have found the easiest way to deal with that is to just use a bucket. I have a tiny little black one, and I take this pot and I put it in the bucket. And then it works as a temporary reservoir where I can fill it up and make sure that the water soaks into the medium and gives the plant a chance to drink. I try not to reuse the bucket because you don't want to be passing water that's been around one plant's roots to a second plant. So if I do have to reuse the bucket for different plants, which isn't very many, I've bought them all their own decorative exterior pot, but if I have to do it, typically I'll wash the pot out with bleach and soap, or I'll run it through the dishwasher. Next, I'll take each one of the plants that I want to water and I'll position them in the sink so that I can get as many of them together without having too many of their leaves overlap. And this is more or less like Tetris in the sink. I'm trying to do this fairly quickly. I will say that when I do this normally, I am normally taking photos and blabbing with some friends on chat and kind of doing whatever. I definitely do not tend to do this very efficiently. But for the sake of the video, I'm trying to do this fast. And that should just about do it for round one. Now that the plants are all positioned in the sink, I will grab the fertilizer. And I do this first because the first like 30 seconds that the roots are wet, they're going to take up the most moisture. So why would you waste that time using non-fertilizer water when it's pretty much your one opportunity to pack as much into the plant as you can? So I take this and I literally just spray the crap out of the whole thing. The leaves, the roots. I get it into the crown. I know everyone says don't do that. I think it's complete bullshit that people say that you shouldn't get plants wet. I mean, specifically orchids, think about this. They come from rainforests where the humidity is like basically 100% and where they get torrential rainfall at least half of the year. So for someone to say don't get your plants wet is just, it's like honestly one of the dumbest things that I've ever heard. It's so dumb. And since I've changed this and started like getting the whole thing wet, I've actually had way more success because new roots and new leaves that are growing out like have less friction and problems, I guess, and the new roots start taking up water when they're like an inch long. So I let them sit like that for about 5 to 10 minutes, sometimes longer. Often what I'll do is actually take more fertilizer water and top it up more so that it's not just like a tiny little bit. I want to get pretty much each one of these up to the limit, up to the edge, up to the limit. All right, so they've been sitting for about 2 minutes, 2 to 3, maybe 4 minutes. I'm gonna give them another like rinse through and then let them sit again just because I didn't really like top them right up. And I wanna make sure that the roots that started to get wet with fertilizer water are really getting a good solid chance to drink. I also try and get the bottom of the leaves wet with the fertilizer water because I am pretty sure, based on the reading that I've done, orchids are actually foliar feeders, which means they can take in nutrients and things like that from their leaves. And as far as I'm concerned, the more opportunity that I can give my plant to drink, the more valuable it's going to be in the long run because it needs to be super hydrated. Should pretty much cover it. I'll let them sit for a bit and then I'll come back and we can rinse them off and edit the video and carry on. All right, so these are the plants after they've been sitting for probably about 10 minutes in fertilizer water. You see that they've all got drips and drops of water all over them. It's not a big deal. If you're concerned about it or if you've had issues with rot, you can blow the water out of the crown. But honestly, in my like many years of doing this and all of the fears that I read about online of crown rot, I've never had the issue. And I think part of that is when you're using tap water or you're regularly cleaning the leaves off by like flushing water through them, you're taking away the bad stuff. The only time that I would say that you probably could run into an issue is if you have a new plant that's come from a greenhouse where they've never done this. So then you potentially have a bunch of bacteria and stuff that's been sitting on your leaves. But again, look at my plants. There's no leaf rot on any of them. These guys are like insanely happy. So give it a shot is what I feel you should do. All right, so if we take a look in here, the water is now soaked into the roots. You can see it very well. There's a lot of water in there. Fantastic, right? It's given the plant an opportunity to drink. I'm gonna lift the plant up, let some of that water drain. Let's check out the roots just so that we can say, hey, look at that. They're still a little bit dry. You'll notice they're kind of white. I'm probably gonna set that back in there and let them drink a little bit longer. The objective here is to get them to pretty much that full green that you see that's starting to happen in each one of the roots. You want that to be a solid green rather than that white. All right, it's been about another 5-10 minutes. Let's check these roots and see if they've gotten any more green than they were. We're kind of getting there. Yeah, these look better. That's more the solid color that we're looking for. So I'm gonna take these guys and start watering or draining the water out of them. Okay, so I wanna make sure that I cover this because I'm editing the video right now and I'm a little bit, I think I may have skipped a step or like a declaration of a step and in the editing it's not coming through very, very well. So step 1 is to water with fertilizer, then drain the pots after you've waited, wait for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, drain the pot, then rinse with fresh tap water to fill the pot up again, and then flush and rinse that. And after you've done that, like 1 fertilizer, 1 regular water, you can do it again if you want, but typically I just do the 2 and then I set them aside and I carry on with the draining process, which I set them aside, let the water drain. So now that I've had them sitting in fertilizer water, I want to make sure that I give them a really solid rinse and get rid of the built up salts that are in there. My tap water is super hard, so I want to make sure that I flush that all through. If you have hard water, what happens is it dries and it starts to build up. If you water and don't flush, every time that you water and you let it sit, those salts will redissolve into water and then you flush it through. So the hardness of your substrate is only going to be as hard as the soil is, or the water is, provided you consistently flush it through. If you don't have holes in the bottom and you just let it evaporate inside the pot, that calcium and minerals and all those things are going to build up over time inside your medium, and you can go from having 7.5 pH to 8.5 or 9 in the course of a year. So it's very important to fully flush each pot every single time you water if you're using tap water. So first, let's make sure that the water's not too hot or cold, because you don't want that to like kill your plant, right? Now that the water is good, I'm going to make sure I give them a really solid rinse, each one, including the leaves, because I want to wash off any residual salts that I may have got on there during the fertilizing process. Plus, it just looks ugly after a while if you get too much on there. The Phragmipediums that are in here, those are the grass-looking ones. I want to make sure that I give those a super thorough rinse because they come from areas of South America where their roots are constantly being bathed in a dripping stream of water from the rain and whatnot off of the mountains in the areas where they grow. So I'm going to give that one for sure a couple rinses on both of them. And for the rest of these, I'm just going to fill them up to the top of the pot. I really want to get the whole medium soaking briefly and then flush. So they've been rinsed. I'm going to dump them out, and then I'm going to probably do it one more time, and then I'm going to cut this off because that's how you water your plants. This drainage process should be super easy. The objective here is literally just to get the water out, so there's not a lot of explaining to do there. Just lift them up. Make sure they're not dripping on the other plants if you can. drain them out. Place them back in, and then I'll set them aside. And the advantage to setting them aside like that is you want to get the rest of the water drained out of there. So I'm going to let them sit for probably another 5-10 minutes like that, and then I'll drain it one more time, and then I'll put them back on the shelf. With the Phragmipediums, I'll actually take them and just put them back on the shelf, because any residual water that drains out of there, you actually want to keep the roots like wet all the time. And generally in this bottom reservoir, I'll fill it up to about here with water, so their roots are always bathing in like a bit of water. I actually wrote a post about that on the website, so herebutnot.com, care for Phragmipediums, if you want to know more about that. So I think that like pretty much covers the watering. I don't need to go through and show you me draining and watering every single one of these. Let me know what you think. I'll see how this goes. I know it was super choppy. I wanted to get some of the like key things across about like how I do this stuff. Sorry for the shitty lighting. It's definitely not an ideal place for me to be filming. But hopefully the grow light helped light up my face. So thanks again for tagging along. If you have any questions, put them down below, and look forward to your comments, feedback, everything else, whatever. Thanks so much. Bye.